Oh my goodness, that is loud. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I guess I'm thinking that some of you may be a little worried about how and when you're going to present your PowerPoint presentation. And I do believe that's going to happen next week. Let's see here. So next Thursday, so this will all happen next Thursday. You're going to upload your PowerPoint and you will present your urban community project. And I'm going to create a template for because I've had a lot of questions in the other section about, well, what goes into the survey? You can make up your own questions. They should probably tease out a little information. A minimum of 10 individuals from the area code or zip code for the selected city for your project. You can ask them questions like, do you feel safe? You know, going for a walk in your neighborhood. You know, so they need to be questions that pertain to some of the things that are represented in your city assessment. Safety, education, do you work within the city or outside of the city? What do you think about the school system? Things like that. You can make up your own questions, a minimum of 5 questions. You're going to ask those 5 questions to each of 10 individuals from that area. You guys need to call upon, if it's a city that is outside of your comfort zone, you're going to need to call on relatives or that sort of thing to answer those questions that live in that area. So, you know, you guys need to kind of network a little bit and figure out, well, who can I ask these questions to? Go through your phones, go through your contact information, try to remember who lives in that area code, and you can survey every member of their family if need be to get to at least 10 survey interviews, okay? And then that information is represented in your PowerPoint in perhaps a bar graph or something to that effect, okay? You're going to list the questions that you asked and you're going to show the answers and that sort of thing, okay? All right, so with that said, sorry, there's nothing scheduled for tomorrow as the second half of this week because I need you to work on your PowerPoint. I need you to be fully prepared for next Thursday. I am giving you a no lecture day where I did not give the other class because it didn't work out because they had there was a Monday holiday or something, so that kind of gobbled up their no lecture date. All right, so let's go back and talk about divorce and parenthood. Oh, and one more thing. I will, you're going to have a peer assessment, and I'm going to create a grid with, I'm going to pair up 2 groups. One group will present, group will be responsible for turning in a singular peer, what do you want to call it, evaluation. And you're going to share that with the group and then also turn it into me. Put all of your group members on that evaluation form, and then you're going to switch. And then the evaluator group is going to present, and the other group that previously presented will be the evaluator. Okay, that's going to be easier than having everyone evaluate every single group. It's just, that's just too much. So, and I will create the template and pair up the groups, okay? And I will upload the evaluation form because I'm just not seeing it here. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, so that said, let's chat a little bit about divorce and resilience. Okay. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about marital conflict and divorce statistics. We're going to talk about separation and divorce, the divorce process, the negative impact of divorce on children and families, buffers for the negative outcomes of divorce, and interventions and practical implications. Buffers are the protective factors, basically. So marital conflict, between 20 and 25% of children experience high conflict during their parents' marriage, whether it's a disagreement, difference of opinion, or in front of the children arguing and raised voices. For some, these differences of opinion lead to divorce or separation to reduce the conflict. For others, the conflict remains very much entrenched in the relationship, in the family dynamic, and this especially impacts children psychologically, socially, emotionally, and there is an impact of highly adversarial legal processes that prosper from a divorce situation. Breakups or separations occur in stages. Most breakups occur over the course of about 2 years. Okay, it can be a very painful process leading up to that point. The first stage is an isolation period where partners kind of withdraw from each other. They quit trying to talk it out. They quit arguing. They kind of like pull back and ignore each other. And it's like passing each other in a singular hallway where, you know, it's the only way you can pass. And it's like, oh, excuse me, pardon me. And you just, you know, basically it's when your back's against the wall, you're not quite sure how to dig yourself out, and you use a silent treatment or a no communication thing with your partner. Then the next stage is invalidation. Partners react very negatively to each other. They make judgments, they blame each other, they have negative feelings, they build, they might even have contempt. And this comes out in betrayal communication, talking poorly in front of the children about the other person. And then lastly, there's this betrayal stage, where feeling that the trust has been terribly broken and the support that was expected is no longer there. You do not, you're not working together in the family unit. The ties have broken. So separation and divorce is also a process, and it's a fracturing, painful process. The first piece in separation is desertion. One spouse simply leaves, but the legal marriage remains. And it, without, tying off all of those loose ends, it leaves two people in limbo. You can't remarry again. You're both still legally married, and without sometimes any recourse for support or what have you. And then there's the legal end of marriage, which requires maybe an annulment. It's an application to state that the marriage never took place. And that could be for a variety of reasons, unmet expectations or fraudulent claims that, I'm going to have a family with you. And then you get married and it's like, no, I don't want children. No. So, I mean, that's a huge fraudulent claim in a marriage arrangement that is contradictory to what you both went into the marriage assuming. All right, so then there's legal separation. It's a legal agreement to live apart. It's kind of a halfway point. It's like trying on the living your lives apart. It also can freeze assets so that one or the other person can't liquidate assets or drain a bank account or anything like that. And then finally, divorce. It's a legal dissolution of marriage if the marriage becomes dissolved. Decisions that are needed during divorce can make the process even more difficult. How to divide time with children, how to split personal items or assets. If the two individuals cannot come together on this through mediation or through trying to do your own divorce, then you have to hire an attorney and they bring it before a judge, and the judge will legally decide and make those decisions for you. And you are then putting in someone else's hands in the judicial system to make decisions that you may not agree with and you may not want to go along with, but because you could not make those decisions without a legal involvement, then the judge decides. An example would be in custody, okay? There is kind of a tug and pull, thing going on with when parents are still really entrenched in all of the negative feelings of divorce. You weren't a participant parent for how many years, so you can't have that much custody. I mean, I'm just trying to fly by the seat of my pants and giving you some concrete sort of explanations of how the custody battle ensues. Custody is a legal right to make decisions that affect children. There is sole custody, and there are different types of custody. There's physical and legal custody. You can have sole custody of children, but you might share legal custody. So one person can't leave the country on a vacation without the other's permission, kind of thing. That's the legal piece. Putting the child in a private school has to be a joint decision. So both parties that have legal custody can equally make that decision. Just because you have sole custody, physical custody, where one spouse may have the children live with them year-round, doesn't mean that the other parent doesn't have any custody or issues or any say-so at all. But there is some sole custody when one spouse keeps all of the rights. Perhaps the other spouse not physically, emotionally competent to shelter the children or to have legal rights. For instance, maybe if they are an alcoholic or a drug addict or something like that, you can not have custody rights. They become removed. Then there's joint custody, which tends to be what judges lean into, because it's healthier for children when both parents are involved in decision making, in visitation, in sharing of all parameters of raising the children. Joint custody is when couples share equally in decisions. Then there's split custody. Each parent has sole custody of one or more of the children. Maybe the son lives with the dad and the daughter lives with the mother, kind of thing. Or it's, weekends you're with your dad, or 2 weeks out of the month you're with your mom, the other 2 weeks you're with me. And then both living situations have to be able to accommodate the health and well-being of for that children, have the best interests in mind. So that means both parents need to live close to a same school, can't have two different schools, so that children, their friendships, their extracurriculars are not disrupted. And then lastly, or not lastly, but alternate custody is when sole custody for one designated period of time, and then the other spouse has the children full time. And it might be like if one parent is kind of oversees homework and school and provides that stability for the children during the school year, then the children may go live with the other parent during the summer or different holiday periods. But it needs to be worked out because one parent cannot have every single holiday with those children. Like that creates animosity when you've got one parent overseeing homework and school and getting the children. It's like a horse race and going to a fire every morning and getting homework done, and then boom, Christmas holidays come around and the children are gone for 6 weeks, and that's, or whatever time is winter break, I think it's 2 weeks. That's unfair, and it really creates a lot of animosity. So you have to split up those holidays. And then there's third party custody, where someone else is assigned to care for the children as their legal guardian. Whether it's relatives, grandparents, aunties, uncles, or even an adult aged child in the home. And then sometimes it can be a foster situation. So is joint custody better? Well, in a meta-analysis of 33 studies of sole and joint physical custody, the reports that children in joint custody arrangements have better emotional and behavioral adjustment and better academic achievement compared to non-joint custody, like sole custody situations. Children in joint custody were better adjusted regardless of the level of conflict between the parents. And you can minimize conflict by drop-offs not occurring at the house. You go to a parking lot at Ralph's or Toys R Us, or actually Toys R Us is out of business, or Target, and you exchange backpacks and schoolwork and clothing and medication and whatever else, and you do the exchange there. It's less intrusive and judgy and judgmental of each other's living arrangements, or maybe one partner has a new love interest who is at the home, and then that clash can be uncomfortable. Typically, in child support, typically this is all decided by the judge. And they use something called a DissoMaster, which is a computer-generated program that you just feed in all of the information, assets, job, full-time, part-time for the mom, full-time, part-time for the dad or other individual, and what each of them make, and the custody situation, full or part-time or joint or sole or what have you. And it just kind of spits out a number. Generally, it's about $500 per child per month. And that's, if there's childcare, before or after school programs, that's a whole different edition of stuff. It's typically decided by a judge, but they use a program. It covers less than half the cost of raising a child. The distance may lessen, physical and emotional, may lessen the sense of duty to pay in child support. So if one parent moves out of state, then they may decide, no, I'm not going to do this. Let them find me, let them chase me down. About 85% of payers are male, 15% are female. When females have a higher paying job, they may have to pay for child support if the children live more with the other parent. And this is an example of how they calculate out the child support. It's just, the non-custodial parent, how much responsibility do they have, how much responsibility of the custodial parent, the primary parent that the children live with, number of children in the household, health insurance costs, income for both, and all of that. Alimony, which is now, it's actually called spousal support. It is dwindling. Fewer judges agree to spousal support because by and large, both parents tend to work, to make it work. It's really difficult to rely on child and spousal support in a divorce situation when the parent that the children live with isn't working. It's just not enough. So financial support of an ex-spouse may be legally required after divorce, but it will only last about half the length or less of the years that you were married. So if you were married for 4 years, you might get 1.5 years or 2 years of spousal support. If you're less than 10 years of marriage, then you might look at, you're probably looking at maybe 5 years post-divorce for child support. Marriage lasting 8 years or longer may expect to pay or receive alimony for, say, 4 years, as an example. Then let's look at common law marriage. Common law marriage is a legally recognized marriage between two people who have not purchased a marriage license or had their marriage solemnized by a ceremony, justice of the peace or what have you. Only 9 states recognize common law marriage, not including California. So if you live with someone, say for 7 years or longer, outside of California, in one of the 9 states that recognize it, then they consider you legally married, and then you have to split all assets when you leave, when it dissolves. And it's looked upon as if you were legally married. So what happens in a non-married couple, when a non-married couple separate? Rights to protecting the family residence and dividing family assets are only granted to legally married couples, okay? And that's in any of the states outside of the 9 that recognize common law. Common law spouse who is a sole owner of a shared residence may sell or mortgage their property without consent or without splitting the proceeds. So if you do not marry, be careful where you live, because not all states recognize this common law marriage. So how do couples actually decide to divorce? Well, if you look at the United States here, we're the leader of the pack, okay, where there are more divorces in the US than in any other country in the world. There may be less emphasis on the covenant of marriage in this country, where people are, it's like, yeah, let's get married, let's register for stuff, let's have a fairy tale ceremony, and then it just doesn't work out. Maybe couples don't get to know each other well enough before marriage. And then we have this eagerness to throw in the towel if it doesn't work out. People spend more time reading about an animal they're going to take into their home, how to nurture it, what to feed it, how to train it, all of this stuff. There's more emphasis in that than probably in getting to know a person you're deciding to spend the rest of your life with. So there tends to be cohabitation is probably on the rise because our divorce rate is so high that people don't put enough faith or I don't know, their expectations are that divorce is going to happen. Let's just, make a good run with it and see how far we get. Maybe the clocks are ticking and people want to squeak out a few kids, and they either get married or they cohabitate, and that's still, they just don't look at the bigger picture. So the percentage is typically placed at 40 to 50% that a person's, which depends on a person's background and circumstances of whether or not they go the distance or get a divorce. Cohabitators in general have a 50 to 80% higher likelihood of divorce after marriage than non-cohabitators. However, in previous lectures, we saw that that people who cohabitate for a year or less before they marry, there's no difference in the divorce rate. But if you cohabitate for years on years and then you decide, okay, we're going to have some kiddos here, so let's go ahead and get married, or look at Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, their children urged them to get married, and it ended in divorce. And I think they were together for like 4 or 5 years before they even got married. Coming from an intact family reduces divorce risk by 14%. Having one's first child after marriage reduces divorce risk by a range of 24 to 66%. And some of these statistics, you can amp them up a little bit because they're several years old. Those with a strong common faith have a 35% lower risk of divorce. So an example of parental divorce rates that differ depending on marriage order. This is probably at 50% of first marriages end in divorce. So there's your reason why people are not getting married and just living together. 60% of second marriages end in divorce. 73% of third marriages end in divorce. After you've been through a divorce and you know how wonderful it is to have someone to love and take care of and to share life and challenges and all of that, you get married again, and then you've been through divorce, it's habitual. You decide you're going to throw in the towel at the first challenge or the first argument. And then if you are a habitual person and you just like to get married, then 73% of the third marriage will end in divorce, and so on and so on. Divorce rates in the US have overall increased over time because I don't know why. I don't know why. Then there's this Mentimeter. Why have divorce rates increased over time? Lack of commitment, 73%. Argue too much, infidelity, married too young, unrealistic expectations, lack of equality in the relationship, lack of preparation for marriage, domestic violence or abuse. So, are people getting to know each other well enough before going into a marriage? Are you best friends with your potential spouse before you get married? You need to lay the groundwork, put effort and into, getting to know each other and understanding everything about the other person. There are some, I think there are books or word games or whatever that are out there about that where you compare notes, and they're conversation starters. And even just in chill time, you can say, you pull a card and you say, would you rather be audited by the IRS or Would you rather go to a foreign country and lose your passport? They're kind of ambiguous sorts of questions that help you figure out how the other person thinks and ticks and what their priorities are. And then you kind of talk through it. Well, you could always go to an embassy and get a renewed passport. If you're audited by the IRS, that's going to cost you a lot of money if they find, obviously, they found some red flags. And so that's uncomfortable. But the audit, you can't just tuck that information to the bottom of the bill pile and forget about it. And the passport situation, you're stuck. Unless you get a new passport immediately, you're stuck in a foreign country. You've got to deal with that immediately. But for both situations, you have to pay attention, but it gets you kind of talking about different philosophies and ways of thinking and what priorities are, and where the other person, how the other person thinks through and solves problems. But divorce trends are actually declining. The falling divorce rate may have to do with millennial attitudes toward marriage. Or unlike baby boomers, I'm a baby boomer, was born in the 50s, who married young. Nope, I was in my 30s, regardless of their circumstances, because that's what you did. You got out of high school and boom, you walked down the aisle to get married. A lot of my friends got married immediately out of high school. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I gotta sow my oats. Regardless of circumstances, millennials and some Gen Xers are choosing to marry once they've completed their education, have established careers, and have sound finances. Smart way to go. And that's pretty much what I did. So I don't know, maybe I'm a boomer with camouflaged as a millennial. Who knows? So how does divorce impact children? Divorce can produce a range of behavioral and emotional problems in children and adolescents. For example, in a couple of short clips, we see reflections from children of divorced parents. And these are pretty profound clips. I'm just going to forewarn you. I'll play the less profound one first. I don't know why it's.
Go back there, but it doesn't work. Sometimes I think that because I'm mad or mean or did something bad to them, I think it's my fault that they're divorced. When they are fighting, it's like, okay, I'm gonna take that side or this side. Don't get in the way. That's something I've learned. Don't get in the way. A lot of things are gonna change in your life. At my dad's house, I take a bath. And my mom's house, I take a shower. When I'm alternating houses, I forget stuff. Can we just rewind and live in the same house in the same old world? It's true, it is hard, but I usually get through it. I just talk to myself, and I usually let go a little bit of tears. It's not like what you think, really. We're still family, but we don't live in the same house anymore. That's all.
All right, and this one is a little bit more profound. It gives me a lump in my throat, actually.
Dear Mom and Dad, I know that you are hurting. I'm hurting too. I feel and feed off your tension, fear, and shock. Although I am young and cannot express verbally what is happening in our lives, I'm still feeling the impact. My heart is broken every time I have to give up a parent. My sense of security is lost. Please don't assume that I'm resilient. Please don't assume that my life will be exactly as it was, and that I will continue to feel the same love from both of you. I'm a human being just like you. My needs are just like yours. I need love, attention, nurturing, stability, consistency, affection, understanding, patience, and mostly to be wanted. When you fight over me or put me in the middle of your argument, you are sending me the message that winning with each other is more important than my life. I am learning from you that it is better to be right than to be loved. You are teaching me that I came from a person who is unlovable and wrong, and that I am somehow wrong too. When you confide your hurt in my heart, you are storing up adult pain and robbing me of my childhood. You are taking away my belief that love is unconditional and replacing it with a message that tells me to become hard and not to love because I will get hurt and not be able to recover. You may not understand this today, and I am so small that you are not thinking about my future, but you are putting me at a greater risk of getting a divorce myself. At times, you are risking my safety to fill a void in your heart. My safety is your job. Without you and your protection, I am unshielded from the world. This will manifest in irrational fears for me because I will stay in a state of fight or flight for most of my life. Someday, this initial shock will wear off, but how you choose to parent me through this crisis will never wear off. I will either feel your sense of selflessness, support, protection, or I will have a scar on my heart with a message that reads, "Good things happen to good people. I must be bad." Thoughtfully, the child of divorce.
That really weighs on my heart. I parented two boys from the age of 18 months and 3.5 years with going through a divorce, and their dad moved to New York right away for about 12 years. And just, yeah, it's pretty profound. It just makes you really think, did I do my best? Anyways, so some thought provoking questions here if you want to just write in a journal. If you are in fact a child of divorce, if you took everything that the pearls of wisdom from these two YouTube videos, you use these questions as a jumping off point for journaling. So what does research say about the impact of divorce on children? Stress of initial separation. Well, the majority of children seem to have little emotional preparation for their parents' separation. Perhaps they knew parents were clashing or disagreeing, or maybe parents were healthy enough to keep that all behind closed doors. But usually that impact of we are separating is an absolute shock, and children tend to react to separation with distress, anxiety, anger, shock, and disbelief. These are all stages of grief for the most part, because when there is a disruption in a routine or a life event like that, you do grieve. What was is no longer. So you have to adapt. You have to get over a loss of what you once knew and get used to something very new. So people grieve when there are big changes in their life. Loss of an animal, loss of a parent, divorce, moving to a new city and losing all your friends and all the familiarity of school and work and all of that. This also tends to diminish or disappear over a period of 1 to 2 years, they say, but it can take a long time. Only 5% of children said that they had been fully informed and encouraged to ask questions about divorce. So the one gift that parents can give children is a sit down communication. We are here, we still love you, it's not your fault. And We are still your parents. We are just going to live apart so that we can present you with a happier lifestyle. High conflict is more likely to be destructive post-divorce when parents use their children to express their anger or are verbally or physically aggressive on the phone or in person. So that drop off in a neutral place is highly recommended to minimize conversations on the phone. Maybe go to emails. Emails are rather two-dimensional, but at least you're communicating important information back and forth, and it's silent. Don't put kids in the middle. Research has shown that when parents continue to have conflict, but encapsulated their conflict and did not put their children in the middle, their children did not differ from children whose parents had low or no conflict. So do not put your children in the middle. There could also be diminished parenting after divorce, where one parent pulls away and says, well, you know, they don't need me, you know, the other parents is running with the ball. Children experience less positive involvement with their custodial parent. The parent who has the most time with the children, including less affection and time spent and more erratic and harsh discipline. Maybe because they are grieving and children remind the parent of the other, the other individual. In some cases, adolescents become the sole emotional support for the distraught parents. That's so unfair. Gender differences in divorce outcomes for families. Boys experience greater decline in quality of home environment than girls following separation because the way the court's set up, they tend to favor that children stay, for the most part, with the mother, and then they have a loss of a role model. Fathers typically spend more time with their sons than their daughters during marriage, so the separation hurts boys more. Loss of important relationships. Moving after divorce can reduce contact and relationships with the non-custodial parents. What other relationships can suffer during this transition? Peer friendships, interaction with grandparents, interaction with extended family members, extracurricular activity participation, especially if the custodial parent then has to go back to work. How do you get a child to and from baseball practice, Girl Scouts, or whatever the situation is when you have a job to make sure that there's a roof over your head? There are changes in economic opportunities. So what do we predict are some of the changes in economic opportunities? Loss of financial stability, tighter spending budgets, lack of vacation funds, lack of extracurricular funds, and increased dependence on family and support system. It does take a village, and when two people separate or divorce, then you lose one of the most invested individuals in how to raise the children. The younger the person, the greater the chance that they will remarry. These are the spouses. So most experts recommend waiting at least 4 years before remarrying to heal the hurts from divorce. Children do not take kindly to a parent substitute when parents remarry. Repartnering may be most stressful and problematic for children when entered into too soon after divorce. Second marriages are most successful when partners have figured out what went wrong the first time. And there's a lot to be said there. Unless you examine what part you played in the dissolution of marriage, you're going to repeat that in the next marriage. Are there benefits of divorce for children? Children from high conflict or volatile marriages derive the most benefit from their parents' divorces as a result of no longer enduring those conditions that are associated with the significant adjustment problems. There are protective factors that can lessen these risks. Diminished conflict between parents after divorce, Protective factors include good relationship with at least one parent or caregiver, parental warmth, the ability of parents to encapsulate their conflict, and it's out of the picture. It's not part of our lives anymore. Competent custodial parenting and psychological adjustment of the custodial parent. That means if there's a healing of the parent who supervises the children the most, then there's going to be a better outcome for the children. High level of involvement of the non-resident parent helps. Children's coping techniques also matter. For instance, problem solving and positive restructuring demonstrates an increase in children's feelings of confidence and their ability to cope and adjust to divorce more quickly. So if they see parents going through problem solving, like we're not going to talk about that. I'm here for you. I understand your feelings, but we're not going to talk about what went wrong, because both mommy and daddy decided together that that to be happy, it would be better if we lived apart. So you can keep the emotion, you can keep the conflict out of the picture and just use matter-of-fact explanations. Compared with young adults in continuously married families, young adults from divorced families married earlier report more dissatisfaction with their marriages and are more likely to divorce. A decade after divorce, and why could this be? Because it perpetuates from generation to generation. A decade after divorce, well-functioning college students also reported continued pain and distress after their parents' divorces. So there are some implications here for practice. How can you help families become more resilient during and after divorce? Parent education programs for parents and children, and also support groups. Divorce mediation, in other words, sitting down calmly, talking about how you're going to move forward in a divorce situation with spouse to spouse, sometimes with a mediator, okay? And this is called the arbitration or mediation. And you very calmly, you work out a sustainable routine. All right, you get this holiday, and then the next year we'll swap. And then you get them on Christmas and I'll get them on Thanksgiving or whatever. You have to set your emotion aside and deliberate together. Collaborative lawyering, judicial settlement conferences, parenting coordinator for chronically litigating parents. So hiring someone to kind of help you figure out some of the big ticket items. And family and group support for children and parents. Here's an example of an intervention. Group-based programs for children of divorce showed improvements in children's functioning across academic and social domains. Group-based programs, those are support groups, okay? So here are the take-home messages. Divorce creates a lot of change for families that involve tough decisions. It's a restructuring of the family dynamic. Some of those changes are in child custody, child support, division of assets, and all of that. Divorce can place children at risk for negative socio-emotional and psychological outcomes. And there are various ways to help children and families become resilient during and after divorce. And those are that emotional support, that communication, that matter-of-fact sit down, and also support groups. To bond with other families, there are single dad support groups, single mom support groups, there are support groups for children. And because these support groups focus on single parenting, you can meet other moms or single parents or other dads, and you can share that grief. You can also collaborate on, hey, if you just need an evening to yourself, bring your kids over and, we'll exchange, you know, time off or whatever you want to call it. Or, hey, I think our kids are in the same baseball team or on the same baseball team. Maybe we can arrange some carpool situations. And you need that support. So you need to kind of expand your support system and enlarge your village, because it does take a village. Okay. So that's what I have for you. We did talk about the fact that I am going to create a template for which two groups are paired up, which will do, I need you to upload your PowerPoint for me. And here's the thing, based on the evaluation that you get from your peers, you can beef up your PowerPoint, change it up or whatever before you turn it in for a grade, okay? So this is all a really helpful process. And then with nothing going on tomorrow, I need you to work on your advocacy letters, okay? And your presentations. I'm sorry. Any questions?
Now question, is this lecture gonna be posted, like recorded and posted into the modules, or?
I did record it, so yes, I will post it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, my dears, if you need anything, email me, call me. You have my number, 562-933-8061, or email me and I'll get back to you. Okie dokie.
All right, have a good weekend, Professor.
You too.
Thank you.